The governor is coming out with a state budget, but is it really something that benefits you and me? And if so, how? Well, college professor and commentator, our regular commentator, Professor Peter Mathews is going to join us. He's going to tell us about that. And then
Your voice, KTLK AM 1150, where listening is a virtue.
KTLK AM 1150, it is your voice. Governor Jerry Brown putting out the budget for what he calls a deficit-free state. Some of the things that I enjoyed were, some emphasis, new emphasis that he's putting on education. I like that. And he calls it a prudent budget. We wanted to make sure we peel the onion on it, so I've invited Peter Mathews, professor at Cypress College and one of our regular commentators. Professor, thank you for being here.
Good to be with you, Dave.
All right, so he pledges money for schools. He says he's going to tighten the general fund. Overall, how would you score this budget?
Well, I'd have to give it a C+ in terms of his presentation because I understand, I like some of what you said about him, but the problem is the general fund this year, his proposal, is actually several billion, $6 billion less than what was back in 2007, 2008. So it still hasn't restored what needs to be restored. But like you said, we have to be prudent because we don't know what the economy is going to do. That's the problem, Dave. I got to have a steady stream of resources before we can make real commitments, And it's the same story over again. 10 years ago when I interviewed on NBC when you were there, I said they're going to have to, that the state has to learn how to cut some programs that are not important and to raise taxes in the right places or close loopholes to bring the money in so we can balance the budget. And they still haven't done it. That's why we're in this problem. We got $27 billion debt right now, the state's in, still.
All right. So if the money is not there, he's crafty. Where is he going to, if you could predict, or if you are getting a sense of how he's going to do this, how do you promise people money that isn't there yet? Is he just expecting that the state is going to continue to collect ahead of projections?
Well, we have to wait to see what the Legislative Analyst Office says in a couple of months as to what the projections will be, see if it's valid or not. But still, he's going to have to look at the math. And the Democrats want to spend this $4.5 billion because it came in, and there have been severe cuts in the social programs area. Cuts back to Medi-Cal, doctors, to adult dental care, all kinds of things have been cut, even colleges. Let me tell you, community colleges have lost $1 billion in the last 5 years out of a $3 billion budget. They've lost about a third of it. And Cypress College alone, Dave, where I teach, has 12,000 students on waiting list last year, and this year it was 8,000 on waiting list to get in. So the schools have been suffering. The governor wants to hold off because he's not sure if the money will keep coming in. That's why I've always suggested closing some of the most egregious tax loopholes, like the offshoring loophole, the bank loophole in the California budget. We lose $7 billion because of some of these wealthy millionaires and billionaires putting their money in the Cayman Islands, including big corporations. $7 billion a year, said the CalPERG report of this year. So that's the California state budget losing a hole of $7 billion. We could close that hole, bring that in, and then Jerry Brown would have a lot more money to put in where it's needed.
Yeah, right? But every time we talk about that, Professor, you know what we hear. We hear companies that are screaming and yelping and saying, "I'm going to leave California if you do that." And they're not going to do that. They really can't.
They can't. It's a bluff. Most of it is a bluff. And if they leave, we say, "Look, you guys don't want to do business here. We won't just go. Leave. You have a better market here. You got a better infrastructure. You can make more money here." And the oil companies, for example, they can't take the oil wells and leave. The oil is here. They got.
That's my point. The resources are here.
Don't want to leave. It's a bluff, Dave.
Let me ask you this, Professor Peter Mathews, Cypress College. When you hear the leader of the Senate, Darrell Steinberg, even he calling the governor's budget disappointing, and right now we've got a supermajority in Sacramento. He's going to have to be very adept at his dance, or this could all be good and a lot of hoopla for a day. How do you get it past even your own party that doesn't like what you're presenting?
You can't do it because they have a two-thirds majority, and that's enough to pass any budget and any tax increase also.
All right.
So he's going to have to play ball with them and be reasonable and say, look, I'm going to go ahead and spend most of this $4.5 billion in the areas that we need as a state, and then we'll have to look at some more revenues. Like I said, there's a lot of revenue out there that could be brought in that's being just given away. to the big guys.
Well, as long as it isn't coming from little pockets. I want to play just one part.
Absolutely not. We should not take it from the working Americans or from small businesses. They're paying way too much tax already.
You know, with Obamacare, with the new health care reform, a lot of people are going to be able to qualify for the first time for Medi-Cal, and these are working people, working families. Listen to what he said about that.
Besides education, this budget focuses on health reform. We're adopting the Affordable Care Act for California, and we're expanding our Medi-Cal. We're doing so generously and boldly. There's some questions, so we want to do it prudently. And when the state takes over a burden or service that up to this point is being performed by the counties, we don't want to pay twice.
Do you hear what he said at the very end? He says that if the state is taking over work that has been handled by this ping-ponging back, whose job is it? Is it the county? Is it the state? I don't like it when these kinds of phrases and programs are being bantered between one column and another, because I get lost in the shuffle, and at the end of the day, I'm not, and I hate to use that phrase, I hear it too often, it could be lunchtime for all I care. You never know who's really going to pay the piper.
That's right. This is not a ping-pong game. It cannot be, and we got to be straight. The county is the state. The county is part of the state. It's the local administrative agency, so you should not be throwing these numbers around. He's saying he's going to put out $1.2 billion more to cover 1 million Medi-Cal patients more extra, and that the counties will be relieved of $300 million. He wants them to pay for some of that into social programs. Look, streamline it. It's the same agency. The state and the county are the same, basically, in terms of governmental theory and policy. So just get it straight and let the left hand work with the right hand, is what I'm trying to say here. It sounds like they don't know what they're doing. So we've got to get on top of this, Dave, and it's very disappointing. And Darrell Steinberg has a good point on that, really, because he's the leader of the Senate, and believe me, Gov.Brown has to deal with him, and also with John Perez.
So closing thought, what actionable thing can we do? What can we do if we want to, chime in on this conversation? Yes.
What we have to do is we got to make phone calls. We got to send emails to every one of our legislators and to the governor's office and tell them that we need to have a revenue. First of all, this extra money that came in, keep some of it for a rainy day fund. Yes, keep some of it, but most of it needs to be spent to restore an investment in California and to help the people that are really needing it, that are really hurting right now in this recession. And no country ever cut its way or grew its way through austerity, through just cutting as we've done. So like I said, the state budget, the general fund went down. It's been cut in the last several years. We got to build it back up. So let the public say, find the unfair corporate loopholes. Just Google corporate tax loopholes in California. You'll get a whole list of them, Dave. It's more than $7 billion that could be closed. And don't let these companies scare you, because they'll stay here. This is the biggest economy in the entire United States, out of the 50 states, and it's the 9th largest economy in the world. If we don't invest anymore, we're going to become 10th and 11th and 12th in our education especially.
You bet, and I do believe education has to be our primary investment. Professor Peter Mathews, Cypress College, always a joy, sir.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much, Dave.
All right, so there you go. The assessment is, a C+ on this budget. Smoke and mirror time again, but this time we have a supermajority in Sacramento, so there is something you can do, but you must contact your local assembly member and local senator.